after he'd been here a few days, she just opened the cell and he roved around anywhere he wanted. He used to take me to school and stand out there while I swung on the gate to keep me from falling off. This is a picture of me when that first year that we were here. I don't know who took it. This was obviously me, and my father could never get me to smile. You know, I made friends, and they all came over here, and I'd put them in handcuffs, and we'd play, and whatever. Mm-hmm. But they used to call me the little girl who lived in the jail. Mm-hmm. I used to go to court with my father when he would have to bring a prisoner down, and this was before I went to school. And if we were early enough, once he brought the prisoners down, and before court started, the judge would let me sit at his desk there. What do you call it?
Oh, the bench?
Bench.
Yeah.
And I would pound the gavel and have a wonderful
What about
time.
Preparation for town council?
Sure. But
Tell us about your father.
My father, he's a funny man. He only went through the 8th grade, and
His name?
His name was Robert Bristow, and he, as I said, he only went through the 8th grade. He was a carpenter, and during the Depression, of course, nobody was building anything, and so this was a godsend when this job came. And he was very active in politics. When I turned 21 then, he took me to the town hall, and he said, "I'm going to give you your birthday present." And I thought, I don't know what it was going to be. And so I registered to vote, and I said, "Where's the present?" He said, "That's it."
Oh!
So he was very active, and I was always active because of him.
Yes.
My mother was not a social person, and she didn't go anywhere to political things, and I always went with him. So
good.
And he saw no wrong in anything I did. My mother used to say, if she shot 3 people in downtown Wakefield and stood there with a smoking gun, he'd say every one of those people deserved to die.
Your father was the deputy sheriff?
Yeah.
And was it the deputy sheriff's job to run the jail at that time?
Supposedly, yes. However, the deputy sheriff got dressed up in his uniform every day and went out on the road, and he was here very little. He transported prisoners to court, and I don't think he transported them to jail if they were found guilty. I think they came down and got those people and took them up there. And my mother really ran the jail. He didn't really do much here.
What was? So Barbara, what ages did you live here?
I came here in 1939 when I was 4 and a half. And I left in 1935 when I was 4 and a half. And I left in 1939 when I was 8 and a half, I guess.
When your father's term was up?
Yeah, it was a political job. And when the election came, I can remember sitting there crying and screaming, and my father would say, don't worry, Federal Hill hasn't come in yet." Now, that'll straighten it out. Well, Federal Hill didn't come in, and that next January we moved out.
Back to Peacedale?
Back to Peacedale, yes. Not in the same place, but back.
Tell us.
And my mother really ran the jail. He didn't really do much here.
What was her name?
Emma Torgee. And she was a very strange woman, but she ran the jail. And we would have people come in. We had a young man once, 19 years old, involved in an accident, and somebody was killed, and he was driving. He was charged with manslaughter. And my father was going to put him in with the general population down there, and she took one look at him, and she said, "You're not putting him down there. Come with me, dear," she said. And took him up and put him in a women's cell, which was a private room at that time. And then, after he'd been here a few days, she just opened the cell and he roved around anywhere he wanted. He used to take me to school and stand out there while I swung on the gate to keep me from falling off.
What was his name, do you remember?
John Lang.
So when you say your mother ran the jail, she took care of meals and
She
other
cooked for
things?
us and for the prisoners. She did our washing, their washing. And if he wasn't here and they brought a prisoner, she processed them. And she really did everything here. I don't know how she did it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think about what we have today, as far as appliances and all this stuff, it was a job.
Mm-hmm.
And business when I was about 6, I guess. I would go down and play checkers with some of the prisoners. Mm-hmm. We had a very strange assortment of prisoners. Mm-hmm. We had what we called the regulars, who were, I think you might say they were like some of the homeless people today. Uh-huh. And in October, when it got cold, they would either spit on the sidewalk or something, drink on the sidewalk, or whatever, and do something to get them put in jail for the winter.
A warm place to stay.
A warm place to stay. It was warm down there then. I don't imagine it is now. But anyway, we had one murderer while I was here, and most of the time it was just kind of vagrant kind of people who would do something stupid to come here. And they would stay until May, and then they'd go out again. But they were harmless. And I used to play checkers with these people, but I think the checkerboard is still there. And I helped my mother serve the meals down there. And we did have the murderer. He was an Italian man from Westerly, and he killed his wife. And so he was here awaiting trial. My father put him in solitary on the left side down there. And he went out, my mother took him out and put him in with the general population. And so, as I said, he was an Italian man, and my mother thought he might like spaghetti and meatballs. She cooked that, and I took it down with her, and we handed it through the bars, and he threw the whole thing, and it was spaghetti and meatballs everywhere. He was not a pleasant man at all. But most of them were not. I mean, they worked in the grounds and stuff. And as I said, John Lang took me to school every day.
You mentioned somewhere along the way that your mother was concerned about how the family fit in the community.
Yeah, well,
and I was thinking about
she was worried about the URI people.
Oh.
She was afraid I wouldn't fit in, and she knew she wouldn't fit in. And so it was funny because initially I felt kind of funny because most of those kids didn't know anybody that lived in a jail. And but, you know, I made friends, and they all came over here, and I put them in handcuffs, and we'd play, and whatever. Mm-hmm. But they used to call me the little girl who lived in the jail. Mm-hmm. And I fit in somehow, don't ask me how, but they all accepted me, except when I was about 7, I think, 6 or 7, President Bristow was the president of the university at that time, and his son and another kid grabbed me on the way home from school, and it was this time of year, and there were burrs everywhere, and they put them oil in my head, and they had to cut all my hair off, and it looked like a hat, a brown hat.
Oh my!
They had to cut my I don't know what I look like, and so after that, somebody always took me to school and brought me home.
And where did you go to school when you were here? You must have started kindergarten at that time.
I didn't go to kindergarten. There was no kindergarten in Kingston. I went to a little, it's over near the engineering complex on campus, and it was a little tiny building, and it was, I think you'd call it a nursery school today. And I went there, and I went from like 9 to 12, I guess, and we would do little projects and sing and be read to and so forth. Then you'd curl up and take a nap in a rug, and then you would get tomato soup and Ritz crackers, and then you went home. And that's where I did that, I think only for 1 year. Then I went to school in the old North Road School until, and they had 2 grades in a room then. But anyway, the first and second grade, third and fourth, they were all double grades. And I stayed there until the middle of my 3rd grade year, and that's when we were evicted here and went back to Peacedale. It was a fun school.
Okay.
It's funny, when I went to school finally, and I was sick, I would get addicted to the radio soaps, Mrs. Wiggs of the Cabbage Patch, and David Harum and Our Gal Sunday, and I'd always try to be sick and stay home, but yeah, I couldn't do that.
And why did you prefer, did you not like school?
Oh, I did, but I like to listen to the radio.
Oh, I see.
So. I did have my Girl Scout uniform up here, and it got lost in, when we renovated the town hall. Don't ask me why it was over there, but it was over there. And it got lost, and but it was here before that. It was funny, 3 of the badges I had were the Red Cross band for rolling bandages during World War II, and a theater thing, because I was involved in theater as a kid and throughout my life, and a government thing. And those are the 3 things that I ended up doing.
Isn't that something?
I became
Real
a nurse
predictors.
and made a fool of myself on the stage, and got into government. So
Great.
oh, the furnace was coal. My mother and I used to tend that furnace.
Yeah.
We'd have to go down at night if my father was out, which was usually the case, and she'd shovel coal into the furnace, and whatever stoking means she did, and that's all we had for heat.
And what about the fuel for the stove? Was that
Coal stove.
I remember
I
those
don't
black
know.
lids being lifted
Yes,
up.
yes, it
Something-
could have been a coal
Yeah.
stove. It could have.
Yeah.
And of course there was no. The icebox was right there, where those cabinets are, and you know the iceman would come a couple of times a week.
Come up the back stairs on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but that was over there, and it was. I got a picture of one that was very similar of that too. It was oak. Yeah.
Where was the kitchen sink, Barbara?
Over there. That could be my mother. Looks just like her. But that's the setup she had in the kitchen. We had three hound dogs, puppies that my father bought, and my mother had a fit. And they ate everything in the house, everybody's shoes, clothes, hats, everything. And my father would say, "You've got to give them time to grow up. They outgrow this, you know." And then they ate his felt hat, and that was it. He got rid of 2 of them, we kept 1. That was the dog that stayed after the other 2 got removed. His name was Tiger, and he was a hunting dog, and my father really liked him. Now I think that was one of the hats that was made at the Cyrus French hat factory. That was a gorgeous place.
It is the beaver hat that belonged to Elisha Reynolds Potter, actually.
Yeah.
And it was made right across the street.
He also made silk hats, and he grew his own silkworms.
That's amazing. And you, at your young age, you remember this?
Oh, yeah, I was over there all the time.
Uh-huh.
It was a wonderful, the yard was gorgeous. You could go over there and
Gardens.
pick blueberries and currants and raspberries and anything else you wanted.
And were there flowers? There was a flower
Flowers
garden?
everywhere. I didn't get into the house much because by that time it was beginning to be dangerous to go up the stairs
sure.
or do anything like that.
Yeah.
But it must have been gorgeous in its day. Yeah.
It's noisy here with traffic today, but what was it like then?
It's never noisy. Never noisy. And it was funny when there was a blizzard. Of course, there were no snow tires, and some people didn't have chains, and we had them for guests.
Uh-huh.
And they were in the hallways, in the women's cells, everywhere. It was just a little 2-lane road. They've widened it a bit, but there wasn't that much traffic.
You used to...
Okay, there was a big barn here when I lived here, and it had 2 floors, and on the top floor there was an automobile. I don't know how it got there, but it did.
Where would the barn have been, Barbara? What part
Right here.
of... Right here? So close?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And there were antique cars in the rest of it, I think. But it's a big building. Wall out there, which now seems to me to be almost in my face, seemed like a mile away, and that's where my cousin and I built that little lean-to fort, which lived through the '38 hurricane.
Let's walk around.
And that was interesting too, because we had all kinds of people living here when the hurricane
That's
came.
right. I remember you took people in off the road, correct? Yeah.
We had put 2 big poles, and then I don't know whether we used hay or what we used for the roof, and the thing stood up. There were trees down everywhere, and that thing was still standing when the hurricane was over.
You used to play out front, did you not?
I used to swing on that gate out there. It's not there now, but it used to go right out over the road.
That was the driveway.
The lower driveway there. Yeah. There were 2, I don't know if those granite posts are still there or not, but the gate, of course, is gone. But John Lang stood out there with me, and so that the hot cars wouldn't hit me.
Did you have playmates come and play in the jail yard?
They liked it inside.
An exotic
I used to
living
take them
arrangement.
down into the cells, and they'd talk to the prisoners. I'm sure all those professors were delighted to know that their children had spent the morning conversing with the inmates.